She's a burden. Look at her standing there like a disfigured parasite, leeching off our family while we work to build this estate. My mother Vivian's voice slammed through the crystal speakers of the grand pavilion, sharp as shattered glass. 51 high society guests, city council members, and prominent defense contractors froze in place, silver champagne flutes poised near their lips. I stood erect in my dark blue Marine Corps dress uniform, my spine locked in rigid parade rest, my right index finger tapping a silent rhythm against my trouser seam, a subconscious habit built over 7 years as Captain Olivia Vance, Operations Intelligence Officer for Marine Corps Special Operations Command. In my left gloved pocket, my fingers gripped a heavy steel encryption keycard stamped with the unit designation 55 Bravo. Beside my mother, on the flower-draped stage, was my younger sister, Sophia, wearing a $3,000 designer silk gown, holding hands with my former fiancé, Ethan, who stared fixedly at the polished marble floor. Hanging directly behind them was a massive velvet banner reading, "Celebrating Sophia and Ethan, new CEO and president of Vance Maritime Logistics." "Mom, please," I said, keeping my tone dead flat, using the icy, disciplined cadence I had perfected during combat debriefings in Okinawa. "You sent me an urgent text message 90 minutes ago claiming Dad's medical trustee required my immediate physical presence to sign his final life support documents." "I lied to bring you into this room," Vivian barked into the microphone, her diamond bracelets flashing under the spotlights as a bitter, victorious laughter echoed off the glass walls. "You spent years hiding in military barracks while your sister worked 18-hour days to save our family's $50 million maritime logistics firm. Meanwhile, you refused to give a single dollar from your officer's salary to support your dying father's foundation." Ethan stepped forward, taking the microphone from Vivian, casting a tragic, disappointed look across the audience that sent a surge of cold adrenaline through my veins. "It's true, Olivia. It's true," Ethan said into the sound system, his voice filled with calculated, sorrowful pity. "I tried to love you, but your combat trauma and endless psychological issues made you completely unlivable. Sophia is whole. She belongs in the boardroom. You belong in a facility." A wave of hostile whispers rippled through the room. Investors exchanged glances of disgust, shaking their heads at my stiff uniform. Sophia smirked, leaning against Ethan's shoulder, her manicured fingers twirling a diamond pendant that had once belonged to our late grandmother. "She doesn't even have an active security clearance anymore," Vivian shouted, her voice rising to a screech. "Security, drag this embarrassment off the property before she ruins Sophia's announcement." 2 heavy private security guards stepped rapidly from the shadows of the entrance, closing in on my left and right flanks. But before their hands could touch my uniform sleeves, a broad-shouldered man sitting alone at a front-row VIP table set his heavy brass pan down with a loud, distinct click and stood up. He was wearing an impeccably tailored Marine Corps service dress uniform, adorned with the silver oak leaves of Lieutenant Colonel David Miller. Lieutenant Colonel David Miller, Executive Officer for Naval Criminal Investigation Service Regional Operations. The entire pavilion plummeted to dead silence. The 2 security guards halted in their tracks, staring at the Marine officer in absolute shock. "Mrs. Vance," Lieutenant Colonel Miller's voice cut through the silence like a dropped blade, quiet yet carrying the weight of absolute military authority. "Mrs. Vance, you might want to review your company's federal maritime transit license before you instruct security guards to touch the officer who holds 85% of your floating asset titles." Vivian's smug smile vanished instantaneously. Ethan's hand tightened around the microphone stand until his knuckles turned ghost white. "Lieutenant Colonel Miller?" Vivian stuttered into the microphone, her voice losing its polished venom. I think there has been a terrible misunderstanding. This is a private corporate celebration. Olivia is just a discharged low-level logistics clerk." Lieutenant Colonel Miller didn't even look at Vivian. He turned toward me, snapped his heels together with a sharp, echoing crack, and brought his right hand up in a rigid, flawless military salute. Olivia Vance? Captain Vance, Operation Ghost Anchor has been fully executed by federal authorities. The floor is yours, ma'am. My mother blinked rapidly, her eyes darting frantically between the lieutenant colonel and my impassive face. What operation? What is he talking about, Ethan? Ethan didn't answer. A single bead of cold sweat broke on his forehead, tracing a wet path down his cheek toward his silk collar. I took 3 deliberate, steady steps forward, the soles of my dress shoes clicking against the marble floor. I pulled the heavy steel encryption keycard marked 55 Bravo from my pocket and held it high under the direct glare of the chandeliers, the exact keycard my late father, Captain Thomas Vance, had secretly encoded and handed to me inside a sealed military envelope weeks before he slipped into a non-responsive state. 5 years ago, I said, my voice projecting through the hall with razor precision, my father suffered a massive neurological trauma. My mother informed me that Vance Maritime was utterly bankrupt, that Dad's specialized life support costs were $40,000 a month, and that if I didn't sign over my military power of attorney to Ethan, Dad would be evicted from his private medical center. "Don't listen to her," Vivian shrieked, rushing to the front edge of the stage. "She's unstable. She suffers from severe blast-induced hallucinations from her overseas deployments. She forged those documents." "I signed the military power of attorney," I continued, ignoring my mother completely as the crowd watched in mounting horror. "And for 60 consecutive months, $14,000 a month was automatically deducted from my combat hazard pay, my flight bonuses, and my officer disability trust. I lived in a cold, sparse rental near the base, wearing worn civilian clothes, eating basic rations, believing every single cent was keeping my father alive in a specialized private rehabilitation facility." "It was!" Vivian screamed, her hands shaking violently as she pointed at me. "Every penny went straight to his medical team." "Then why," Lieutenant Colonel Miller spoke up, pulling a heavy blue federal dossier from his briefcase, "does the Federal Medical Registry show that Captain Thomas Vance was transferred to a fully government-funded Veterans Affairs hospice in San Diego 5 years ago, paid for entirely by the United States Department of Veterans Affairs?" The silence in the room was so thick you could hear the distant wash of waves against the floor-to-ceiling glass walls. Vivian froze as if struck by lightning. Her mouth opened, but her tongue refused to work. "You lied to me for 5 years, Mom," I said, my gaze locking onto hers with quiet, unyielding power. "You told me Dad was in strict quarantine, that visitors were prohibited by hospital protocol. You sent me manufactured monthly progress reports, stamped with a fake physician's seal, just so you, Sophia, and Ethan could siphon nearly $1 million of my combat pay to fund your penthouse apartments and designer wardrobes." "Olivia," Ethan stammered, stepping away from Sophia, holding his hands up in a desperate gesture of surrender. "Olivia, please, listen to me. It wasn't my idea. Your mother told me you were deployed in classified operational zones and would never cross-reference local VA records. She said we needed the capital to keep Vance Maritime afloat." "You spineless coward," Sophia screamed, turning around and striking Ethan across the chest with her glittery clutch bag. "You were the one who demanded the high-frequency trading account. You forged my sister's signature on the Federal Port Authority transfers." "I forged them because your mother said she had full power of attorney," Ethan yelled back, shoving Sophia away as the 51 wealthy guests watched the 3 turn on each other like wild animals. Before anyone could move, I stepped over to the main audio-visual desk at the side of the stage. I inserted the steel encryption keycard marked 55 Bravo into the master terminal and typed in my 8-digit security clearance code. The giant velvet banner behind them automatically detached and dropped to the stage floor, revealing a massive LED screen that flickered to life. Instead of promotional videos for Vance Maritime Logistics, the screen displayed a real-time federal audit ledger from the Department of Defense Inspector General, complete with bank account paths, red federal seals, and decrypted wire transfers. Source account, Captain O. Vance, Combat Hazard Disability Trust. Destination account, Sophia Vance Offshore Holdings, Panama. Total stolen funds, $980,000. Classified Port Authority License Number 55 Bravo, registered solely to Captain Olivia Vance. You told this room that Vance Maritime was saved by Sophia's business intellect. Sophia didn't secure our contract with federal defense shipping routes. I cleared those routes using my active military security clearance from my deployment desk. Ethan stole my digital credentials using the military power of attorney my mother manipulated me into signing while I was recovering from an IED blast. No, that license belongs to the Vance family, Vivian shouted, her face pale with terror as she stared at the screen. A military power of attorney obtained through fraudulent medical representation is a federal felony, Mrs. Vance, Lieutenant Colonel Miller stated coldly. At that exact moment, the double glass doors of the Grand Pavilion swung open with a heavy thud. 6 uniformed federal marshals, accompanied by special agents from the Naval Criminal Investigative Service, marched down the center aisle, their tactical boots striking the marble in synchronized rhythm. The lead NCIS agent walked straight up the stage steps, stopping directly between my mother, my sister, and my ex-fiancé. Vivian Vance, Sophia Vance, Ethan Cross, the agent announced, his voice echoing off the glass dome. You are under arrest for federal wire fraud, multi-year military pension theft, corporate espionage, and unauthorized manipulation of classified defense logistics credentials. Get your hands off me, Vivian shrieked as a female marshal pulled her arms behind her back, the sharp, heavy click-click of steel handcuffs echoing through the silent hall. Do you know who I am? I am Vivian Vance. I chair this city's maritime charity board. Your charity board, the agent replied with absolute indifference, was frozen 2 hours ago following Captain Vance's submission of sworn federal affidavits and forensic banking ledgers. Ethan offered zero resistance. He dropped to his knees on the stage floor, weeping hysterically as the officers cuffed his wrists behind his tuxedo jacket. Sophia screamed as her $5,000 gown caught on the podium edge while she was led away, her social standing demolished before every news camera and corporate investor in the city. Olivia, stop them, please! Vivian sobbed, her face contorted in frantic, ugly panic as she was hauled past me toward the exit. We are your blood family. You can't let these people put your own mother in prison. I stood straight, my shoulders back, my chin held high, looking at my mother with absolute, unshakable calm. You told everyone I was a burden, Mom, but the only burden I ever carried was the weight of your lies. As the federal marshals escorted my mother, sister, and ex-fiancé down the aisle past a crowd of horrified investors who were already pulling their contracts, Lieutenant Colonel Miller stepped up beside me. He didn't offer superficial comfort. He simply offered a crisp, solemn nod of profound military respect. Slowly, every defense contractor, city official, and veteran in the pavilion stood up from their tables, breaking into a roaring, standing ovation that echoed off the high glass ceilings, honoring the true officer who had stood her ground against absolute corruption. I pulled the steel encryption keycard from the console, feeling the cold weight of truth in my hand, knowing that 5 years of manipulation had finally dissolved into the unshakable peace of earned justice. You cannot cure toxic family members by sacrificing your honor, your earnings, or your truth. For 5 long years, I allowed my family to manipulate my sense of duty, believing that my silent endurance was proof of my love for my father. I let them insult my military service, belittle my achievements, and steal my combat pay because I foolishly believed that keeping the peace was worth any personal cost. But manipulative, greedy people do not view your patience as love. They view it as an invitation to exploit you further. They will steal your hard work, dismantle your self-worth, and attempt to publicly erase you, all while playing the victim when their deception is exposed to the world. Real peace does not come from quietly enduring abuse to protect people who harm you. Real peace comes from standing firm in your integrity, stepping into the light of truth, and allowing the unyielding consequences of their own choices to dismantle their lies. Never set yourself on fire to keep toxic people warm.